There's a documentary on Amazon Prime, and it was the race between Netflix and Blockbuster. And today we laugh about it and we say, like, Blockbuster's gone. Blockbuster almost won. Quentin Tarantino, before he made Pulp Fiction, he reckons...
John Travolta.
John Travolta.
Yeah.
Apparently his name was mud. He wasn't getting hired for anything. Apparently he had one or two flops in the early 90s, late 80s, and no one would hire him for anything. But he reckons he really liked him. He liked Grease. He liked these old movies of his. And he took John Travolta to lunch one day and he said, I would like to work with him. And then whenever we went to lunch with him, everywhere he went, people were screaming and were like, he was a god. And he's like, this doesn't make sense.
Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson, an experienced marketing and sales consultant with a science background, and I'm your host. This season of the podcast is essential listening for small and medium-sized companies looking for their next stage of growth. Myself and other experts will explore common problems in marketing, product, and sales. We will deconstruct them and then detail straightforward, evidence-based remedies for you. I aim to give you both inspiration and practical solutions to push through similar challenges in your own company. Thanks for being here, and don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Push podcast. In this episode, we dive into the essential strategies and circumstances that enable business growth. And you'll hear how companies like Zoom, Figma, the Carnegie Association, and Hubspot experienced hyper growth. You'll even gain insights about business growth from, believe it or not, Quentin Tarantino and John Travolta. Some of the specifics of this episode will include how Blockbuster almost beat Netflix but tripped at the last hurdle, the truth behind the iPhone growth myth, what really happened and how Steve Jobs made the decision to create it, a personal story illustrating how a company dropped its product price from $500 to $29 a month and that triggered rapid growth, the 3 common reasons a company experiences hypergrowth with case studies from Zoom, Figma, and HubSpot, how a co-working space risked cannibalising their growth by introducing a new product, and market signals that indicate you're close to rapid growth. For this episode, I'm joined by product marketing specialist Alex Urquhart, and we will give you plenty of practical takeaways in this punchy episode. If you want to find myself or Alex online, you can find links to our online presence in the description of this episode on whatever platform you're listening on. Let's get started. Hello, Alex. Good to see you again today.
Good to see you too, mate.
How you going?
Good. Glad to be back.
I'm glad to be talking to you again. I'm excited for this episode. We're going to talk about how to know if you're on track for growth.
Yes, I'm going to interject there, and I'll have to take off. So I think, very passionate about this. I think it's probably the first question.
I'll strap in.
I'll keep my ADHD under control. But I think this is really interesting, right? Because I think it's probably how every single conversation starts with almost every single company, whether I've been in them or I work, if I'm consulting or if I'm just knowing them. It's like, how do we see rapid growth? How do we see hockey stick, unicorn growth? And I don't want to bastardize that because that's probably what we're all aiming for, right? We all want to make a company highly valuable and so on and so forth. I think there is an insane misinterpretation of what it is and how it works. And so I think for today, it's sort of the vibe is growth isn't instantaneous. It's not luck. It's not this sort of turn a switch and we see success. I think one of the biggest ones that I want more people to know and my lessons learned definitely have been, you see it coming. It's not something that you open up your email one morning and it's like, bang, 44 leads paying 100 grand each of just keen to buy you. It's never going to happen. It's never the case. It can happen in rapid succession, but you'll see the, signals coming before they sort of happen. And I think understanding what those signals are and how to go about them and stop wasting time chasing instant fixes, because I can see the seductiveness and I get there's pressures in companies and I appreciate all of that. But chasing these really quick growth is just, I've never seen it work. I've never heard of it working either. But I know you had a story you told me recently. I'm keen to hear what that one was. It was about you in a co-working space. Was that the one?
Yes. So that's a good story about how to know if you're not on track for growth.
Yes.
Is, I know I'm starting with a negative, but there's a few things that you can see that if a company's starting to panic and an organization starting to make very interesting decisions and just throw random ideas out there, look, one of them being, let's start a podcast, and that's just going to solve all your growth problems.
Here we are.
And that's what Alex and I are doing. And now we cannot keep leads at bay. Please stop trying to work with us. We're inundated. And after starting the podcast and doing this, we cannot keep up. So please, no more clients for us. You're going to have to find some other consultants.
We have no competitors. Our competitors have competitors.
Yes, we don't. We're above. We sit like on that layer above that we're the first choice and the only choice because we started a podcast. And then everyone else can
catch up.
They can just fight amongst themselves, I guess, because this was the answer.
This is success.
Which we knew. Yeah. Which we went into this going, well, do you want a jet? I want a private jet. Yeah. Let's just get one. Yeah. How do you get one? You start a podcast. Yeah. So yes, that's if you hear people saying things like that, question that perhaps. Yep. But an example with a co-working space that I did work with once upon a time is when they start panicking and start putting out other product ideas or service ideas just randomly. Now, I'll give you some context. So the products people could buy was effectively a dedicated desk for a month, which let's say it's about $500, or a community desk, which is a hot desk for a month, which is about, say, $300 a month. And you could use that every day on both memberships. It's just one, you had a dedicated spot, you could leave your stuff. The other, you had to bring your laptop in and out. You didn't have a permanent space. You might need to move around and sit elsewhere. Now, management in that organization started panicking a bit and decided, let's bring in another offer to the market, which was...
So they weren't getting sales enough. They were like, let's just chuck a new product in.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And that being a 10-day-a-month membership, right? So let's say that's for $150 a month. This was the suggestion. I guess it sounds okay on the surface. A couple of things with that. If you bring something out to the market, you then have to promote it. People have to know about it. First thing. That promotional effort, you're then not putting into your existing products or services. So I'll note that. I'll also note that because I knew the members of this co-working space and I knew the community members who were using that hot desking option, I knew that this new offer would cannibalize that existing offer. Right. So if this had been brought out, all that would have happened is that the existing community members would have just moved to the 10-day-a-month option. Yep. So that would have lost the company a lot of money.
Right. So these are people who were trying to find or trying to use the cheapest option available.
Yes.
And they would have changed their way of operating to go down a tier.
They wanted it. Yeah. I already knew they wanted it.
Interesting.
So it was a case of you can give it to them, but that's going to lose us a lot of money.
Yeah.
If you're going to get new people in for it, you're going to have to get so many in to compensate. And you have to promote that and people have to know about it and no one knows about it yet.
Yep.
So when you see a company panicking and throwing out random product or service or promotional ideas, that's a bad sign in my experience. I've seen that a few times. You've got to look for cannibalization when you bring out a product or service.
Yep. Because
there is a fallacy that just more is more.
Yep.
No, more can take away from what you already have.
Yep.
And often does.
And it's a good point. I think even too that your growth is dependent on your buyer's decision making. Like how fast they're going to make a decision. So if you're selling hats, right, and someone can almost in 20 seconds buy a hat on an online ad, then ramping up ads and changing or adding a new type of hat could double your profits, maybe in a B2C e-commerce perspective. But in this one, as you're saying, like my first thought goes to, well, if you had people lining up at your door, knocking, being like, we would buy a co-working space if you had this 10-day-a-month option, maybe that is a good idea. If you got the demand is there, but I think that's the problem is growth is dependent on demand, not on supply. And people go, change a product, I'll throw in you, like you're saying, they get desperate or they get panicked and if they add that in, they'll cannibalize what's already there. And then you got to hope to God you can fill that gap and more with people who want to come in. So I think my other thought is in that one, if they buy the a new customer comes in, when they buy the 10-day option, would have they already bought the other option, like the existing one? Like, is this new option actually going to influence demand in any way? And I think that's when it comes to growth, people don't ask that question enough and want to hear the answer enough of changing the supply can have an effect, but it's only as good as whatever the demand is.
Yes.
Like I said, exactly right. If you have people lining up the door and they said 1,000 people would buy a ticket tomorrow to be here if you had this other option available, then go for it. And I did one actually kind of recently many years ago for a product, and they took it as like an enterprise product, and I got to know the buyers and the industry, and there were smaller companies with faster decision making. And the more evidence kept showing these aren't enterprise people. They don't need an implementation project. They don't need training and train. If they could, they would rather pay not much, watch a video and intro, and do almost like a Calendly Canva version of it, where it was just plug in and play. And there was so much evidence that we did change it. And it was like it was up to almost $500 a month down to $29 a month. And the volume increased rapidly, and it cut down our time. We took a hit to begin with because, like you were saying, those existing customers went down to that tier, of course. So we lost money there, but the volume took up faster. It helped with expectations. When you're paying $29 a month versus $500, you expect to call someone and get help immediately. $29 a month could be a week before you hear back. So it lightened our load substantially, and we're able to move much faster. So I think with that growth side of things, it's highly dependent on the demand, not the supply. So you stop getting caught up with the supply. Another example of the whole sort of you see it coming was, and I pick on the large complex B2B stuff because I think people want to see that, but knowing that those decisions, like I was saying, take a long time. Even if your product is fantastic, it takes a long time. And there was an example I had where the team was like, we need sales immediately. We need growth. And they were trying to throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks, make a podcast. Pretty sure they did at one point. And it was like, we need this thing.
As they should have.
As they should, yeah. It's where the success is. But it was like you were saying before, cause and effect. That things don't just happen. It's probably you got to put something into the market and eventually stuff will start coming back out. And this one was, we ended up going to New Zealand and we sent emails and we tried to do these New Zealand clients and we said, stuff this. We know these people prefer face-to-face engagements. We know the buyer needs these things. They prefer to go to their office, buy them a coffee and talk to them. So we did a road trip for 2 weeks from the top of New Zealand all the way down the bottom, and we met with 30 potential clients. We reached out to them. Hey, we'll be in the neighborhood, buy your coffee, whatever it is. We'll come, so like catch up. And they loved that. Immediately replied. Went from a response rate on our outbound from 2% to 12%. People were way more interested to meet someone face to face, and it was more authentic. Met with all those people. The pipeline of those 30 meetings, I think there was maybe like between 15 to 20 that were actual opportunities that we could progress. Of those opportunities, one of them progressed very quickly in 3 months, which was like a rare, not usual sales cycle, which was good. But then probably about 4 to 5 others took about 12 to 18 months to convert eventually. So we saw that coming. Those sales weren't, oh, we changed this thing or we released this feature or something happened. To your point before, you got to promote it, you got to push it out there. And we saw that growth. And of course, people who didn't see behind the curtain of what was happening, they were like, oh, you guys are killing it. Do more of that. I said, well, that was done 6, some of them were 12 months ago. The growth you see now was from 12 months ago. And I say to these large B2B clients that they go, for this quarter, they go, we want double the growth. I said, well, let's not focus on this quarter because whatever happens on this quarter was because of what you did 6 months ago to 12 months ago. Park it. Accept what it is, manage the expectations of your investors, whatever you got to do. Let's focus on the next 2, 3, 4 quarters because the fourth quarter in the horizon, you're going to have way more influence over. So plant seeds now that you can reap then.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that because I'm lazy. I'm saying that because that's the reality. That's the reality.
Yeah, it's. I saw a Jeff Bezos quote recently that he doesn't speak at many things, I think, but on this occasion he was speaking on stage and he said that he gets congratulated for this quarter often. And his response is always, the success of this quarter, that was done 4 years ago. That's why we've had a good quarter, because what we did 4 years ago. He's currently working on 4 years in the future. His work today is what will influence their outcomes in 4 years' time.
Yes, 100%. And it's hard because then people go, well, I've got 2 years, of like runway. Well, then how do I get this stuff in 2 years? And I think there are some really honest questions and answers you got to hear. And it's maybe there are things, maybe there's faster things you can do. Again, if you can figure out a way to get your buyer to make a faster decision, that'll change it immediately. But I think you've either got to try other things or you've got to manage your expectations or whatever you got to do, plant the seed and eventually see it coming. But to that point, whatever you do today, in 6 months, you'll see things happening and you'll see, like, for example, on that other stuff about Jeff Bezos there, I reckon he would have seen, say, all these customers come in, meetings would have increased, buyers in certain areas would have increased. It wasn't a sort of knee-jerk reaction and going straight up. It would have happened over time. And I think, you definitely see it coming. And I think there was a Lenny's podcast and he went through something like 20 unicorn companies that saw hyper growth that everyone desperately wants. And he was like, well, where is it actually coming from? What's the point? Short answer was there was many different things, but the main 3 were external market influencing. You have the example of Zoom and COVID. Like COVID happened, everyone went online. Therefore, without any responsibility to the Zoom company, they happened to be at the right place at the right time and offer something that people needed. And it was like, cool, great. We'll sort of jump in on that. Same thing goes for people selling face masks. It's like, sure, 6 months before COVID, you were desperate for customers. Now you really can't keep them off you.
Yeah.
Like it went through the roof. So that's again demand and decision-making changed. The other one was a feature release that pivoted around the problem. And I want to be really clear here. This isn't, we kept throwing features at the wall and one happened to stick. It was an obsession with the customer and an obsession with what they were trying to do that there was a missing link in between. And the example I use is Figma, which for those who don't know, Figma is a design software that helps with like designing apps and designing websites and those sorts of things. And they originally had as a really easy way to do wireframes and mock up what your designs look like. But then they realized that designers constantly need to work as a team, share designs, get feedback, critique it. So as the story goes, they created the Teams function where you created not just a designer account, but a whole Teams account that everyone could contribute and comment and edit. And that saw hypergrowth. That took off really quickly. They already had a base to work with. They already had a lot of customers. So that just amplified. But to my point, they already had people lining up the door saying, we need this thing. We have this problem. Please solve this problem. It wasn't just, let's throw this thing in the deep end and see if it works. Same with the iPhone. The biggest fallacy over here is, no one knew they needed an iPhone until the iPhone got good, I think. So it was a technology. It wasn't. If you hear Steve Jobs talk about it, his one was he saw that there was a hyper dependency on the internet. And this was 2005, 6. I think the iPhone was 2007. But he saw the internet was getting better and faster. People were relying on it in personal and in jobs more often. People with the iPods were kicking off. And he said people want access to songs faster. And he said also there was BlackBerries and all these other phones. You couldn't access the internet. You were very limited with the UI. So a keyboard or a touchpad, there's only so much you could do. But the mouse on the computer could do sort of anything. So he's like, it's got to be touchscreen. You've got to have full UI, a completely changeable UI that has full access to the internet and mobile. People are going to be relying on mobile more and more and more. Before that, internet on your phone meant nothing. You could check an email and that was it. So he was like, of all these factors and all this demand, that's all coming to the point of this one area. Maybe there's something I can capture all this demand on one thing. So it was like, he didn't just whip up the iPhone one day to be like, how cool it'd be if I did this. Let's see what happens. He looked at the market in depth and then made that decision. Then the third one was doing more of what works well. And so instead of going like, hey, we'll make a podcast and run ads and do blogs and do partnerships and outbound email, he was like, there's probably one or two things that work really well. And the example of, say, Hubspot, which I think 2014, they sort of pioneered inbound content, which everyone thinks, if I just make blogs about thing, people search, I'll pop up on their Google. If you do it well, it takes time. And now there's more noise on the internet. It's getting harder and harder. But they just went to town. They wrote all these how-to blogs. They wrote all these guides and all this stuff. And it was not much on the internet like that. So everyone just flocked to their website. And eventually it was like, well, these guys know what they're talking about. And there's stuff with paid ads or with events. I'm saying with those webinars, Carnegie Association that does those courses on how to do better speaking and leadership. Their primary growth funnel is webinars.
Yep.
They do lesson webinars and at the end they go subscribe or join our course.
Yep.
So the point is that there's, just to wrap those three up, there was either an external marketing force you have no control over. There was a piece of the platform that you add or change that meets the demand that you found.
Yeah. And Netflix did a great job of that. Like I remember listening to their CEO, their ex-CEO, Mark Randolph, recently on the Diary of a CEO podcast. And he talked about that moment for them was when they changed to a subscription model effectively.
Right.
But again, they had all the infrastructure there to be able to do that. Customers were whinging about late fees. So they came up with the idea, well, why don't we just let them subscribe? They can send, and I think it was DVDs at the time, but they can send the DVDs back when they're done with them rather than get hit with these late fees and have to manage this in and out all the time.
Yep.
So yes, that was that pivotal moment for them, effectively changing the business model. But they had the people whinging about late fees to go off.
They changed around the demand that was presenting itself.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's a documentary on Amazon Prime, and it was the race between Netflix and Blockbuster. And today we laugh about it and we say like Blockbuster's gone. Blockbuster almost won. And it's a really interesting documentary because to that point there, Netflix stayed true to what it was. They stayed their focus. They looked at the demand, what was happening. Blockbuster already had more brand equity and had more money and stuff. But I don't know if you know the story, they got to the point where it was like they were neck and neck and they were doing the deliveries and they just moved to the internet. And the internet was slow. So broadband was sort of coming in and they brought in this old school CEO, another really good lesson, to the Blockbuster. And he was like, this company was built in brick and mortar and will succeed on brick and mortar, and cut their Netflix equivalent, got rid of all that stuff, was like, the internet, not going to happen. We're going back to stores. People love going to stores. They love buying popcorn in the stores. And he just doubled down on the stores with no understanding of demand. Like, we're not going, oh, people are asking for this, therefore we'll go this direction. Just an arrogant CEO leadership perspective. And of course, it died within like 6 months. And everyone was like, well, we don't want to go to these stores. We want to dial on our internet and just watch something quickly. Like,
I'd love that guy if I was Netflix.
Yeah, right, 100%.
What a legend.
I think they were like, yes.
Take him out for a drink.
Yeah,
Thanks,
100%.
mate.
Thanks for that fuck up. Yeah, you just saved our company.
Drinks on me for the rest of your life for that. Thanks.
100%. Yeah, and no doubt he probably hired by another FANG company after that. But
yeah.
So I think with those ones there of like that growth stuff of like, growth is dependent on demand, not supply. And that needs to be tattooed somewhere, because that's just like, people keep throwing things at walls. You were saying, throwing products, ideas out there, not a bad thing if it's backed up with demand and evidence. If it's just products because your brother-in-law thought it was a cool idea, don't do that. The podcast idea of just because some Joe Rogan made millions and whoever made millions off the back of it, it doesn't mean it's directly proportional to your growth. Podcast equals growth. That's never the case. Unpack why and what the demand was and why it worked. And you'll find that even that example, Joe Rogan, it was like 4 years, I think, or more, where he got nothing. Same with Alex Hormozi, 4 years of nothing. 4 years. Some careers are shorter than that. Like, and he kept throwing at the wall, kept pushing. Eventually, it took off. But you'll see it coming. And I'm sure that Alex Hormozi's one, same as Lenny's podcast subscribers, he shows his graph, and his one is, it sort of goes through a few little jumps. He'll say, like, someone famous shared a thing, couple of jumps, and I think it was he pioneered himself on Substack, the website, and he was quite popular. And then Substack released the feature of recommendations. So if you're watching a podcast and you recommend it to other people, and when people did that, it just created a network effect, and he was so liked that it just took off, and it's this huge exponential curve. But again, he had 3 years, I think, and a lot of demand prior to that.
And the back catalogue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And he had his strike rate. It was these smaller pool of people loved him. So it was a matter of how do we expand that, as opposed to finding people that care.
Yes.
Is very different.
Cool. All right. Anything else to add?
Growth isn't instantaneous. It isn't gambling. It's not throwing stuff at the walls to see what sticks. You'll see it coming. Follow the demand. Same fundamentals. Listen to the customers. Follow the demand. Find what they need. Find what most people would love. And if you're an executive, whether it's a startup or whether it's a big company, like, I don't think anyone should ever be afraid or too high and mighty to not get into the weeds and listen to customers and get on the ground floor and go, why is this happening? Why isn't it working? One last story. Quentin Tarantino, before he made Pulp Fiction, he reckons, what's his name? It was a guy from Greece who was on Pulp Fiction.
John Travolta.
John Travolta.
Yeah.
Apparently his name was Mud. He wasn't getting hired for anything. Apparently he had one or two flops in the early 90s, late 80s, and no one would hire him for anything. But he reckons he really liked him. He liked Grease. He liked these old movies of his. And he took John Travolta to lunch one day, and he said, I would like to work with him. And then whenever we went to lunch with him, everywhere he went, people were screaming and were like, he was a god. And he's like, this doesn't make sense. Everywhere I go, all the evidence is showing this guy's in high demand. But Hollywood, for whatever reason, it's a faux pas. They don't want to do anything with him. So he was like, fine. He hired him. And even John Travolta was like, really? Like, you're going to cast me as one of the main roles in this huge Tarantino film? And he did it. And then from that, there's this like spike in his popularity, because then he went on to like Face Off and all his big movies of the 90s. And he was sort of like nothing, then boom. And then everyone's like, oh, it's because of his acting performance. And he was like, nah, Tarantino just knew this guy was already in demand.
Yeah.
But no one was tapping into it good enough. So...
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
But that perfectly sums up. That's a perfect analogy for the episode.
There's growth exists. It's tapping into it, not creating it.
Yeah. There's demand there. People wanted to see him clearly, and Tarantino just happened to listen. All right, another episode done.
Awesome,
Thanks for chatting, Alex.
See you in the next one.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, and if you are enjoying the episodes, please leave a review of the podcast on your platform of choice. It really helps to build the podcast credibility and to help others find this type of information.